It's one of the things that De La Salle was always emphasizing with the brothers and his students. Let us remember that we are in the holy presence of God. Kids really kind of think about that line. And I tell them about the experience of the brothers. Every time they go through a door, you know, De La Salle taught them, remember that you are in the presence of God. And just that reminder is something the kids know there's somebody else with them.
I fully concur with the French historian Compere when he says that De La Salle and his disciples made a difference. They succeeded where others failed because they launched a movement. And that movement outlived the founder, outlived the first generation, and continues to today.
We really wanted the teachers to see that they were not just doing some job, but that this was a real vocation, and that their teaching was at the service of the gospel, and therefore that fundamentally they were ministers of the gospel all day long. Huh?
De La Salle passionately believes that God wants young people to be loved and to know that they're loved. But the only way that you can be loved and know that you're loved if you're loved. You have to be loved. Somebody has to do the loving.
I think it's pretty clear what the purpose of the schools for De La Salle and the earliest brothers was. He says that in his rule that the purpose of this institute is to provide a Christian education for the children of the artisans of the poor who have been left to themselves and badly brought up in a way that their parents have not been able to do for them.
But it's not because they don't want to care for their children. It's not because they don't care. They do care, but they're passionately involved trying to find the basic necessities of life, and then children, therefore, are not getting the attention that they need.
What De La Salle was trying to do was give these kids possibilities. Those kids had no possibilities. They were going to be in menial jobs. They were the urchins on the street, and there were no possibilities for them to make change, to get in there and be a part of what was going on.
De La Salle passionately believes that God wants young people to be loved and to know that they're loved. But the only way that you can be loved and know that you're loved if you're loved. You have to be loved. Somebody has to do the loving. And for him, it's when the normal means by which children are cared for, parents and church, are having trouble doing that, God raises up and invites other people to assist in that work.
He focused in on the plight of these poor kids that he thought something could be done for by giving them a decent education in the fundamental skills that they would need to succeed, but that would be integrated with some sense of becoming decent, observant Christians, and out of that observance and knowledge of the doctrine, if you will, to really become convinced believers, so that, the phrase he often used with the brothers, that they could be described as disciples of Jesus Christ, who had some good sense that God loved them and that they were being loved by God, which they would experience in the love of the brother that cared for them.
His first vision was that if you could have these people in a school, you could help them to learn those things which were necessary for leading a proper human life, and also they could come to instruct these children in the technical sense of teaching them their religious duties, and thereby give them a motivation for living better than they were disposed to learn simply by living on the street.
Well, the scriptural passage that the poor have the gospel preached to them, which occurs both in the Old and New Testament, is that I think he saw that as what was happening here, but it wasn't just that these kids were receiving the gospel, but that God wanted them. He did not want them to be poor, and he didn't want them to be the outcasts of society, that there was a reality to the concept of salvation in this world, and that's the schools were providing that, as well as salvation in the next world.
The school is a total entity. It's not just a series of things which you can take one bit or the other. The vision is of a total one of a human being learning those things necessary to live with human dignity, and also learning that that dignity comes because these human beings are made in image and likeness of God, the Creator.
For me, a significant part of the structure of a school for De La Salle is the relationship that the teacher has with the student, okay? That the teacher is an invitation to a student to be in a new kind of relationship.
I try to bring out kind of an internal appreciation and an internal confidence, a self-confidence with my students. It's one of the greatest things that I did in high school was built my self-confidence, and I try to do that with my students. I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I can do, is helping students to realize their own self-worth.
One of the miracles that happens, it's not multiplying bread and walking on water. It's getting a young person, all of a sudden one day, to break the code, to get access into a level of understanding where from the inside they light up and they're different because the kind of thing that led them not to believe in themselves or to believe somehow that they're damaged goods, all of a sudden they know that that's not the case.
Where is there any real chance to express the depth of a human relationship that's positive, but not sticky and not sentimental or anything like that? You know, love and the best understanding of what it means, really, where it's so clear that the teacher is concerned about the good of the student in front of him, that the student should see somehow that the love of God is coming to him through the love of the teacher. I think many of these students never had experienced love before in that situation, and that would probably be true today. But suddenly to have the experience of a teacher who really loves them, that certainly would be an important element of continuity.
When the young people saw that these Christian adults really were respectful and caring and cooperative and sharing with one another, then it was possible that they could make the adjustment to begin to see that the relationship that we have with them is an invitation into being in a new way of relating with one another.
What De La Salle did was he saw a need. He saw all these kids out there who were not being educated. There were very few students, there were very few people being educated at the time. He saw education as one of the things that was a basic need. And so he brought a group of people together and taught them, and they went out, brought these kids in, and started educating the kids, and did it in a very revolutionary way.
It's this constant advancement, this constant urge to improve and be more relevant each day, which I find is part of the genius of De La Salle. And that's why I fully concur with the French historian Compere when he says that De La Salle and his disciples made a difference. They succeeded where others failed because they launched a movement. And that movement outlived the founder, outlived the first generation, and continues to today.
Well, when you ask about intellectual development and Jean-Baptiste de La Salle, I think the first thing you have to say is that for him, he never separates intellectual development and religious development, either in the situation or in his theorizing about it.
Of the 6 hours or so we're going to be in school, only 1/2 hour is going to be on specifically religious matters. Now surely this is saying that as distinct from a catechetical congregation, the vision of this group of people is that the major part of the time in school is to be spent preparing to be a useful citizen in this society. But the two things are